Hello guys, we welcome you all to today's event, Employment in the Legal Field, featuring Future Trainee Solicitors at Linklaters. The event will include extremely useful application, interview and assessment stage tips for all seeking a career in law. We hope you all enjoy and wish you all the best of luck in your final exams.
Hello everyone, my name is Ayo. I am a non-law graduate. I studied economics from the University of Loughborough and I am a future trainee at Linklaters. So what drew me to want to become a commercial solicitor derives from a range of factors over the course of my university career and my time working in a professional environment, including a summer internship I did in an investment bank. But I'd like to say the root of it is the fact that I've always been interested in understanding business. As an economics student, I've always had an avid interest in commerce and the way the world works and the financial markets operate. And so being able to pursue the career as a commercial solicitor, I found this as an opportunity for me to apply my knowledge and interests in economics and the way the world works to help clients and businesses to pursue their commercial interests, and so some key topics around that always sprung up to me as matters of particular interest, such as M&A or competition law or financial regulation. And these are all things that are covered by private practice law firms in the city. So that was always something that attracted me to want to pursue a career as a commercial solicitor.
I've always had an interest in commercial law. I grew up in a family of legal professionals, and this is what sparked my interest in the profession. For example, I still vividly remember a dinner table discussion I had with my mother when I was about 16 about how the courts could freeze assets during banking disputes. Our frequent discussions motivated my decision to study law at university. At uni, in my first year, I secured a place on a first year insight scheme at Brian Cave Leighton Paisner, or BCLP. On the scheme, I shadowed a partner, reviewed a share purchase agreement, and drafted a written report on a client's liability for breach of one of the terms. This was my first taste of commercial law, and what I loved about it was that the subject matter was complex, so I had to think about how to solve a client problem from a different perspective than I would usually do. And the work that I did on a day-to-day basis during the scheme was different each time. So this is what people mean when they talk about the variety of work. Having different tasks to do meant I was learning each day, and this kept me engaged throughout the internship. But what cemented my desire to be a commercial lawyer was my subsequent vacation scheme at White & Case. The highlight of the scheme was being involved in the verification process for a client's, an energy client's IPO. Just for a quick explanation, the verification process is that with an IPO, a company is going public, and so it needs to make public statements about its business. And one of the roles of a law firm working for that company is to go through all of the statements it's made in its prospectus and other statements to the public in this process, and to verify that everything it said is true. Because if it's misled the public, then it could be liable for misrepresentation. And I enjoyed working in a 4-person team on that deal, because I began to appreciate more that commercial law involves knowing the law, but also understanding a client's business and having access to the company statements and financial accounts during that process gave me a much better understanding of a business and the lawyer's role in improving a client's business. Overall, my commercial law experiences made it clear to me that I want to be a commercial lawyer because it involves a dynamic client-facing role in an international environment, and this is something that appeals to me.
So when thinking about the details that you should have in mind before applying for a firm in particular, and also applying to, whether that be a vacation scheme or a training contract or alternative routes into pursuing a career as a commercial solicitor, I think in the first point you need to really figure out for yourself why it is you're applying to that particular firm or organization. Because if you don't have a passion to join the firm or that organization, that might just, show through in the effort that you put into an application, or even when speaking with as much conviction as you would like to at an interview. That will always come through. So I think it's important to generally be interested in pursuing a career at the organization that you're applying to. Secondly, in terms of the route that you want to take, I think it's important that you understand where you are as in your current position. So in my case, I'm a non-law student, so I know that I would either be doing the GDL and the LPC or the PGDL and the SQE if I'm taken on to do a training contract. So that's always something you've got to bear in mind in terms of what is going to work for you. Say you studied elsewhere outside of the jurisdiction of the UK, you might have to do I believe it's called the CLEX. I'm not too sure on this, so don't quote me for it, but you might have to do an alternative route than a student would do having studied law in the UK, for example. So these are all things you need to take into consideration depending on your starting point. Again, also on the topic of knowing what you're going to apply for, I think it's important to take into consideration where you are in your current stage. And I say this because, say you're in first year, you'll only be able to apply for first year schemes, and some firms will make it very clear that you have to be in either first year or your penultimate year to apply for this. So there's no point making an application and spending all that time doing late nights and all that research that we all do for applications if you're not going to be eligible to apply for it anyway. It will just be a waste of your time, where you can better use that time to apply for things that you are eligible to apply for.
In terms of key details to look out for when applying to firms, there are three that I'm going to highlight. The first is the type of work a firm does. The second is the firm's international outlook or strategy. And finally is the firm's training. So for my first point, by work the firm does, I mean its practice areas or sector focus. It's important that you take some time to think about what type of work you're interested in, which could be anything from banking and finance, corporate M&A, or real estate. It could be a particular sector such as shipping or insurance, and working out why that practice area or sector attracts you. And this means giving a genuine personal reason, so that when you're conveying this to your interviewers at an interview, you can explain why your ambitions align with those of the firm which you want to work at. Moving on to my second point, every firm in the city does a lot of international work. This could be cross-border deals or litigation involving more than one jurisdiction. But the distinguishing factor is that they do this in different ways. Some firms, such as Linklaters, for example, have offices set up in several jurisdictions, and they rely on their network and adopt a one team, one firm approach. However, on the other hand, you have firms such as Travis Smith or Slaughter and May that have fewer offices and rely on a best friends network. So they have a circle of allied firms in different jurisdictions and they rely on their expertise. So it's important to research what type of strategy the firm you're applying to adopts and why you feel that strategy would benefit you, or how you feel that your ambitions, your background aligns with that strategy. And moving on to my final point, which is training. Different firms have different training programs, and this is one of the most essential things you need to learn about because you're applying to be a trainee. So it's important you research how the training is structured, whether it's more hands-on on the one hand, or it's more sort of autonomous. So trainees are dropped in almost at the deep end and given real work to do right from day one without a lot of structured training, and sort of have to figure things out for themselves. This is key because different training programs are going to work better for different kinds of people. If you're someone that likes a lot of responsibility and doesn't mind taking risks, then you might be more suited to more autonomous training, which firms like US firms can offer. Whereas if you're someone that likes to have a more structured approach and be taught things before you dive in, then a Magic Circle firm might be more for you.
I'll say the application stage is definitely very daunting. I must say that, especially for myself when I was making applications, but it does get better, and I must say that over lots of practice and learning from your mistakes, it certainly does get better, and you will get there in the end. When the current situation or the current status of making applications, I think it's important to just stick to the basics of attention to detail, correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar. The name of the firm, I think a lot of the firms may have X and Y. They might like it to be written verbatim as opposed to abbreviation, stuff like that. Some graduate recruiters can be quite nitpicky in that regard. So just understanding how firms would like things to be done, because all firms are different and all graduate recruiters will look at things differently. So that's always important to bear in mind. I would also say it's good to get a friend or someone reputable to review an application before you send it off, because there might be things in there that will sound and look great to you because you're the one that wrote it, but for someone else looking at it, they might flag something up immediately and say, oh, what's this? And then that will have you looking at it in a different way. So it's always important to do that. I say if you can do maybe a friend or careers advisor at a university, or even external organizations like SEO or Rare Recruitment that also do application and previewings on behalf of candidates. Those are also quite important. But generally, I would say it's all about practice. And I think for me, over my tenure of making applications, which lasted around a year, you do find that your previous applications, you do look back at them and think, wow, I wonder why I did this. And the later ones that you do see the progress, and that's always good to see. So I definitely say, you've just got to practice and just learn from your mistakes. Take on board feedback from wherever you're given it. I'll say the main thing for me was also applying for open days. And open days were great for me because the application, format or style was quite similar, can be quite similar. And that if you apply for an open day, say, it won't be as competitive, but once you send an application that gets accepted for an open day, that the application is fairly good, so that can almost form a basis for, making similar applications to the vacation schemes or to the training contracts. And I found those very helpful for me personally.
The 3 skills that I think it's important for any applicant to have are, firstly, good project management skills, secondly, good teamwork skills, and finally, excellent commercial awareness. So with my first point, it's important to show to any firm that you're applying to, that you can balance multiple work streams successfully, as this is exactly what your training contract is going to involve. To acquire this, I would suggest taking up another hobby or sport in addition to your academic or professional commitments at the moment, and then expressing in your applications and in interviews that you've been able to manage your time effectively between two different things. This could be between attending tutorials or writing essays and playing another sport such as tennis or football. Just being able to show this to any prospective firm will allow them to see that you're someone that can handle doing several things and the demanding timetable that comes with working in a commercial law firm. Turning to my second point, which is good teamwork skills. In a commercial law firm, you're going to have to work in a team for most of the work you do. So it's important that you can show that you work well with others and you can identify other strengths and sort of nullify their weaknesses. So in order to acquire this skill, I would suggest thinking about what you're doing at the moment, whether that's studying at university, working, or anything you like to do as a hobby. And just ask yourself whether there's something that you can do that involves working with others right now. One example would be if you're working or attending uni, is there any project that you can get another person involved in? Try and do that, or volunteer for something that requires more than one person, and make sure that during this experience you write down what you did to make that group successful, and really think about how your actions impacted the group as a whole. That's what firms want to know, not just that you can work well with others, but how what you do directly correlates to the success of a team. Moving on to my final point, it's important to have excellent commercial awareness, because firms want to know that as a commercial lawyer, you need to know the law, but there's commercial in that as well. So you need to be able to understand the commercial implications of things that are happening around you, because that's what your clients are going to want you to know. Law is primarily a client-facing industry, so it's important that you can break down exactly what is happening for your clients and how they can learn from it to make their business more successful. So in terms of improving your commercial awareness, I would suggest using Finimize and Little Law, which are two excellent resources. Another resource which I found incredibly helpful was The Economist's Money Talks podcast, which is every Tuesday evening. If you listen to that once a week, it will really help you understand how commercial news stories are impacting businesses and the economy. And finally, if you get a chance, try and sign up for the Aspiring Solicitors Commercial Awareness Competition. It's a fantastic way to see what level you're at.
So making an application stand out, I believe, can be done in a whole load of ways, and that can be from experiences at university, getting involved in societies or clubs such as mooting, or anything involved in university that can show that you've been proactive and you've been able to gain some transferable skills that could be relevant to the role that you're applying for. Or it could be professional working experience, such as being a paralegal, or shadowing a solicitor for a day, or shadowing a barrister, or anything of that regard that could also be relevant. But generally, I would say it's all about bringing your story to life and using your experiences to try and navigate or tell a story to the reader or the graduate recruiter of why is these things have developed you to become the best future trainee at their firm, and how this has prompted you to want to pursue the career of being a commercial solicitor. So I think the ways to make application stand out are very broad and vast, But it's all about, being able to leverage your experiences and your story to, make a compelling sell almost to a graduate recruitment that's going to read your applications. I'm going to say a typical and very common mistake, certainly something that I did in my initial stages, is not making applications specific enough. And I mean, writing an application for one firm A and literally is changing nothing but the name of the firm and submitting it to firm B. And, every so often I will catch myself, submitting the same application to firm C, but referencing the name of firm B. And, that is just easy ways to just have your application thrown in the bin for, really simple things that you probably shouldn't be doing anyway. But I mean, it's really easy to want to do this, and it's definitely something that I honestly did at the start, but it didn't really get me any further to my end goal, as opposed to just getting a rejection email over and over again. So I'd say making your application, very specific to the law firm, really showing that you've done your research and you understand, the values and the principles of the firm, what it is they do, what they're about, and that will definitely shine through and make your application stand out even more than, another applicant that has just gone on the surface to find out a few bits from the website and has just thrown things in there like, firm has got XYZ number of accolades on Legal 500, but what does that mean to you? Or someone else saying this firm has XYZ number of firms around the world, but going a level deeper and saying this is what this means for me, or this is what attracts me to the firm even more, as opposed to just jotting down accolades there that they will probably already know about themselves, but taking it a little level deeper and just applying it again to your own story and your own interest for commercial law and also the firm, I think will definitely make your application stand out a lot more.
So with the application process, I'm going to start with common mistakes that lead to rejection. There are two key common mistakes, and the first is typos or poor grammar. It's essential that you look over your application several times before submitting it, as one of the key competencies that firms look for is attention to detail. So just by going over your application and ensuring there's no inconsistencies in your writing or missing letters and all that kind of bad stuff, then you're automatically putting yourself within the top percentile of applicants. So that's one thing I would stress. The second common mistake that I see when looking over applications is not answering the question. And this might seem quite obvious, but sometimes the questions can be phrased in slightly different ways. And it's key that you structure your answer and phrase it in a way that directly corresponds to the question that you got. Too often, candidates see a buzzword in a question and sort of decide what they want to write about. So it's important that you really think about what a firm's question is asking you, so you ensure that you're not missing the point entirely or focusing on the wrong aspect of the question. And then moving now on to what I think makes an application stand out. I'm just going to give you one very important thing that I think will set you apart, and that is showing that you've taken the time or effort to make a connection with someone within the firm and learn about the firm from someone inside it. So by that I mean this could be through networking on LinkedIn or organizing at the moment a virtual coffee with someone that you know that's a trainee or an associate at a firm, or even going for a virtual event. I know that Legal Cheek are doing a lot of events with law firms at the moment while things are virtual. Firms are still doing their virtual open days. I cannot stress enough how important it is to attend one of these events or network with people and speak to them about a firm and find out what that firm is like and why that attracts you. And once you do, the next most important thing is that you convey this to the firm you're applying to, that you've attended this event or you've spoken to this person, which can even be a future trainee at a firm such as myself, and just conveying that in your application, that you have spoken with someone within the firm or attended a firm-sponsored event, and this is what you've learned from speaking with that person or from attending that event. That's something that I wish I knew when I first started the application process 2 years ago, and it's something that I feel really catapulted all my applications once I did.
So finding your feet into the legal, graduate recruitment process is certainly not an easy feat, and probably, perhaps, in my opinion, harder for a non-law student, although some might disagree. But I think in my situation, there were, things that I did or loopholes that I was able to, figure out and make use of that helped me. And the first of those would be legal online virtual internships done on Inside Sherpa, which is now known as Forage. And I think those really helped me to give me an insight into the typical things that will be done by a trainee solicitor in various firms in different, practices and different scenarios. And I think, those are really helpful just for me to get a better understanding and a better perception of what it is that a trainee solicitor actually does and what it is that they actually work on. And those are things that I could also make reference to in application forms, put on LinkedIn, and also even talk about in interviews. Secondly, I would say webinars, online sessions that are hosted by external organizations such as Rare Recruitment or Legal Cheek. Some are also done by law schools such as University of Law and BPP, and also law firms themselves will also host online sessions for aspiring candidates just to learn more about the firm, the work and the training. And those are always good opportunities to learn more, broaden your understanding of what it is the legal sector is all about and what it is those specific firms do. And then I'll also say networking. That also is a very massive part of a non-law student in particular, trying to get their foot on the rungs and the ladders of the legal space. For me, I made friends with as many law students that I could, as many aspiring non-law students that I could, just because everyone offers a different perspective or a different narrative that they can offer to you, and also vice versa. You can also help them explore a different narrative or understand a different perspective, and also networking with graduate recruiters or people who are current trainees or even future trainees, just to understand what it is they did and things that help them. And I think all of these things also help you to just broaden your own and understanding and narrative of the legal sector. And finally, I'd say reading law firm articles. So a lot of firms will have their own blog sites where they'll publish latest developments on Brexit or regulation or competition law, and these are things that they are currently working on themselves and are currently giving advice to clients about themselves. So if you want to be able to be in a position where you can talk about things that the law firm is concerned with and also talking about themselves, the law firm's article pages are probably your best bet, because they can be quite complicated, but once you get to understanding what it is they're actually talking about and doing your further research and further reading around the topic, I think it's smooth sailing, provided you actually understand what it is the article is talking about. And these are definitely things that you can feed into commercial awareness questions on application forms, or even commercial awareness questions in an interview, and it'll be very great for them to see a non-law student with so much knowledge on something that is very, very specific to the law firm and its clients. I like to believe that there is this anarchic narrative that Russell Group students are superior to non-Russell Group students, which is something that I certainly don't believe in, and neither should you. And I hope it's something that is currently changing and will continue to change. From my perspective, I never felt that I was at a disadvantage because I went to Loughborough or because I studied economics. Sure, it made things difficult and it put me on a different route and a different narrative, but it's not something that I would say was a major disadvantage to me. I think it all comes down to believing in yourself, your abilities, and having confidence in you being in yourself, being able to make it and make a name for yourself in the industry. And once you have the confidence, that always shows through in both your application and just your way of speaking in an interview. It will boost your your morale or just your whole persona of going into an interview, knowing that you can put everything you can into an interview and into an application process to get the role that you want out of it. I also think it takes a bit of strategy when applying to things. So what really helped me was applying to the Linklaters Get Ahead scheme, which was done over summer specifically to attracting ethnic and minority students that are graduates and final year students. And so this is something that I believe Linklaters will be doing again this summer 2021, which is something that I'd recommend for as many of you as possible to apply for, which certainly helps me give me, a leg up into the application process from the vacation scheme to the training contract, and just, giving me a bit more understanding into, things such as M&A or the way a deal is done and the different stakeholders that are involved in the deal, even up to what I should be expected to deliver from the training contract interview process or the vacation scheme assessment center. I know quite a few firms are running their own similar type of summer programs to help students, get into these things. So if these are things that are available for you, again, to apply for and you're eligible to apply for them, I'd certainly recommend that you do so.
The advice that I would give to non-Russell Group university students applying is to have confidence in yourself and believe that you can work at these top firms. A lot of firms are moving away from a focus on your work experience and what you did before the application process, especially in light of COVID. Firms, for example, Linklaters, where I'm a future trainee, is placing more of an emphasis on the application process and moving towards more situational and critical thinking assessments of applicants. So I would say it's important to first be confident that you can do it, and then to translate this to your application. So have the enthusiasm to research firms that you're applying to thoroughly, be able to show this in your application that you've gone the extra mile to understand how that firm works, what its business model is, its practice areas, how the training is structured, the culture, by speaking to people within the firm or attending firm-sponsored events. There are so many ways now, especially with the move to virtual working, to gain insight into a particular firm and demonstrate this to a law firm without even leaving your house. So although you might think you're at a disadvantage by going to a non-Russell Group uni, you're not. I would say now more than ever there's a level playing field because everyone has access to the resources and the events and the people who can give you an edge in your applications, and it's up to you to take the initiative and seize it.
I think aside from the generic sort of tips like, spelling, punctuation and grammar, I think a big thing that some students can always miss out on is the fact that applying early is the key. And I think this is really important to get your application in as soon as the application cycle opens, because that will mean that, there's more spaces available for you and there'll be less pressure to, put in a super amazing out of this world application. Not that your application isn't super amazing already, but I mean it's just less pressure when submitting an application as soon as the application cycle opens in comparison to, a couple hours or a couple days before the application cycle ends, because, some firms, especially ones that recruit on a rolling basis, will be giving out assessment centers and even giving out, places on these schemes or places on these training contract intakes as soon as they come in. So, it's always in your best interest to get your applications in early, even if, they only review applications at the end. That is still, your application is still below the narrowed down the bottom of the list, as opposed to someone else that put the application in early and, gets seen early and potentially gets given that, interview opportunity or assessment center opportunity as soon as the cycle opens. So I'd say it's definitely a massive favor for yourself to just submit your application early, and this will definitely mean prepping for these applications long before the application cycle opens. And this is, I think, is a massive tip that helped me in the cycle that I got my application. In the cycle that I got my training contract in, because I was preparing for, the applications that I was going to submit before the cycles opened. So that meant me, doing research into the firms I wanted to apply for, the things that were currently going on at the law firm and currently going on in the market, and just thinking about the style of questions that I could be getting asked at an application, at an interview, and prepping for, things such as case studies, being able to discuss, why is a law firm is doing this, or why is a client or a company is currently doing this. All things such as that, to advance my commercial awareness skills and my ability to talk about competency questions, or to talk about any of the, curveball questions that a law graduate recruiter might ask me in an interview, or a partner or managing associate might ask me in an interview long before I'd even, made my first application for, as soon as the cycle opened. So I think, applying early and prepping ahead of time are two big tips that I'd recommend.
So I'm going to give 3 tips about how to improve your interviews beyond the generic interview preparation. The first tip is to smile and strike a conversation at the beginning of your interview. This is a point that sort of flies under the radar a little bit, but you want to demonstrate at the start of your interview that you're confident and that you can hold a conversation. One of the things an interviewer is going to look for is whether they can put you in front of a client without any supervision and be comfortable that you're going to deliver and not embarrass the firm. So just by being able to show that during a pressured situation such as a training contract interview, that you can keep your cool and have a 3-minute discussion about sport or the weather or plans post-lockdown, shows to your interviewer that you're confident, you can communicate, and that you're someone that can hold their own in intense situations, which is what they want to see. And doing that right at the start is going to set you apart from other candidates, but also allow the interview to flow much better once it starts, because you've built a bit of rapport with your interviewers. My second tip is to think out loud. This is more relevant to partner interviews, final interviews, and commercial awareness interviews, or case study ones, rather than the competency interviews. But the point is that during these interviews, you're not always going to know the answer. And even if you have an inkling about what it might be, you might be unsure. And the mistake that I've seen or heard candidates make is that they are unsure about the answer, stay silent for far too long, and then just start talking about what they think it might be, jumping to a conclusion without explaining how they got there. And the risk with that is that you can completely miss what the interviewer is asking, or just be wrong. It's a bit like a maths problem where you just put your conclusion at the end, you get no marks for working. So what you want to do is to think out loud when you're unsure, or even when you are sure of an answer. Just break it down for an interviewer, almost like you're talking to a toddler about what you think, why you think that, and how that leads to the answer that you arrive at. That's going to ensure that they can see your thought process, and it's going to make it much easier for an interviewer to sort of assess whether or not your thinking aligns with their firm's, regardless of whether your conclusion is right. My final tip is to prepare strong questions to ask at the end of an interview. The thing to remember is an interview isn't over till it's over, and you can rescue or flunk an interview up till the last moment. So by having strong questions to ask interviewers at the end, which demonstrate interest, research, and commercial awareness where appropriate, you're leaving a good lasting impression at the end of your interview on your interviewers, and this can make or break your interview. So it's important to prepare these questions well in advance of your interview by researching the firm thoroughly, and if appropriate, researching the interviewers themselves beforehand, paying attention to the practice areas they work in and any recent deals they've done. This is what's going to set you apart right at the end and going to leave a nice impression once you leave.
I'm sure many people have lots of varying opinions on how COVID-19 affected the application process, but for me, I think this made it a lot more simpler and allowed me to have access to a wider range of information and be able to attend a lot more sessions than I normally would have if we were in a normal world of commuting and having these open days and online sessions done in person. So, for example, over the 2020 period, lots of webinar sessions were done online by Legal Cheek or by Rare Recruitment or by law firms themselves, and I think this allowed me to sit in and listen and learn from as many of them as physically possible in my timetable, and this would mean that I don't need to spend XYZ amount of time traveling from Loughborough to London to attend an hour session in Moorgate, or to attend an hour session in Liverpool Street. I can just open my laptop one day and from the comfort of my university of accommodation and listen to an hour-long webinar, and then do the same again tomorrow and then same again the next day after that. And so I made sure that I made the most of the online sessions that were being provided by a wide range of law firms and organizations out there. Secondly, in terms of assessment centers and interviews, these were obviously conducted virtually over WebEx meetings or Skype, and I think again this certainly helped me to relax a lot more than being in that that law firm prestigious building, going in there and having to conduct yourself in a different way that you would do in a virtual interview. And I think once you've done them both, you will figure out how it is you are able to comport yourself or express yourself as you would like to convey yourself in the two different situations. So thinking back to an assessment centre that I did in February 2020 when offices were open pre-COVID, that I think I found that a lot more intense just because of the whole experience, as opposed to doing an assessment centre that I did in December 2020 during the national lockdown. So I say for me personally, I think the virtual world definitely helped me have access to a whole load of more online tools and resources than you probably would in usual times.
In terms of COVID, it's funny because I feel that it has helped my applications, or it helped my applications in a lot of ways, although it did make it a bit tougher in certain aspects. Concerning how it improved or helped my applications, I feel it gave me greater access to the resources I needed to excel, and I feel that this is something that still applies to all candidates. A lot of firms are doing virtual schemes with Inside Sherpa, more virtual events with Legal Cheek or virtual open days, and are making more of a conscious effort to reach out to students while things are virtual. So there are a lot more opportunities to interact with law firms and get to know them. And this is something that's going to set your application apart by being able to reference your interactions with the firms. With the interviews and assessment centers, it's a bit tougher because you've got to adapt to doing things virtually, and it involves a different skill set. You can't look into your interviewer's eyes and sort of gauge how the interview is going. You kind of have to be more confident in your answers, because it's harder to tell when you're going off track. And in terms of your assessment centres, it can be a bit more nerve-wracking doing assessment centre tasks virtually, especially if firms keep any teamwork exercises. So what I would say to sort of get over this hurdle is just to practice doing things virtually as much as possible. Try and organise some Zoom calls with your friends before your interview or assessment centre, and just practice having conversations over Zoom or delivering answers to competency questions over Zoom. This will really help you get used to the process of delivering your answers and having a conversation virtually. And I think that once you do a bit of practice, you'll find it quite easy.
Thank you all for tuning in. We hope this event helped in some way, and good luck to all those filling in applications. As you all know, we're coming to the end of the academic year, which means your memberships are soon to expire. If you'd like to remain a Law Society member, please be sure to rejoin on the Student Union website. Thank you very much.